Haggai chapter 1, I'll just read it here. In the second year of King Darius, on the first day of the 6th month, the word of the Lord came through the prophet Haggai to Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, son of Jozadak, the high priest. This is what the Lord Almighty says. These people say the time has not yet come to rebuild the Lord's house. Then the word of the Lord came through the prophet Haggai. Is it a time for you yourselves to be living in your paneled houses while this house remains in ruin? Now this is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. You earn wages only to put them in a purse with holes in it. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. Go into the mountains and bring down timber and build my house so that I may take pleasure in it and be honored, says the Lord. You expected much, but see, it turned out to be little. What you brought home, I blew away. Why, declares the Lord Almighty? Because of my house, which remains in ruins, while each of you is busy with your own house. That's pretty stiff words he was speaking to the nation of Israel in regards to the temple. But I think the attitude and the message is still applicable. The principle is still the same today as it was to those people then. So today we're going to talk about the authority of God, his authority. And I kind of felt like in the last minute that passage just kind of went along with it because there's a bigger overall picture. There's two questions I want to start off with this morning, but the title screen says Big God, Little Church. I think Noah did a great job finding or creating that screen. But most of the church congregations in America are under 100 people. You know that, right? There are very few churches over 500 people in America, but there's enough because of the big church growth movement back in the 80s and 90s and that kind of thing. But most church bodies, congregations, 50 to 80. I'd commented in mine and Ronnie's prayer time, and a bit of an issue with it. He's everywhere all the time, particular location. I will be also. So whenever a couple of us got here, he's amongst us already. And so we go to singing songs about the Holy Spirit inviting him here, and we invite Jesus in our prayers to be present, when really what we need to begin to do is ask Jesus to help us see his presence. Ask Jesus to help us know and be aware that he is here and he is working all the time. Now, having said that, God's a big God, right? And I've tried to illustrate to you a bunch of times that you are the church. Y'all together at the church, but if I just take Mr. Wayne and pull him off to the side over there, Mr. Wayne is the church just as well. Jesus died for his bride. You are the church that he died for. He died for everyone, but he died for Mr. Wayne, and he died for all of you. So looking at it from that perspective, you are the church. Uh-oh. Me and the boxes, I'm going to do it again this year. I'm going to end up stepping on one of them. But So if you are the church and God died for you, then God's a big God, right? God's a big God, right? Yes. Okay. I didn't hear anything. So if he's a big God and he's omnipresent and he's all powerful and all knowing, here's the big picture. I can probably say this when we go home, but I'm not. We're not. So anyway, if he's such a big God and he's so all powerful and he's everywhere all the time, he created everything in the universe. Then if God is that big and he is with us this morning, can God not do big stuff with a little church? Can God not do big stuff in a little church within you this morning? Can he not do something big within you, the individual who is part of his church? He can, and he will. We just sang about how God won't fail me now. He won't. He just won't. Because God's never changing. He's always the same. And if that God can speak that to those people about his church, about his temple in that day, then I believe that word is applicable to us. Why are we so worried about building our paneled houses? In other words, why are we so worried about creating our own individual wealth all the time? Why are we so worried about what we have, what's tangible, and going and getting more when he's saying what you need to do is go get to build my church, to work on my church, to work on my kingdom, to work on my kingdom, God says. So anyway, with that in mind, I done kind of got on my soapbox a little bit. Do we the church, just something to ask yourself, do I personally, because you're part of the church, whether you're a member here, whether you're a member across the street, behind us, up the street, down 302, wherever it is, do we have a deep commitment to God's authority over our own authority and over the congregation's authority? In other words, who's in charge? Whose church is this? It's God's church, right? Yeah. Are we willing to pray? Here's the question. Are we, this church body and the church across America, but especially I'm the under shepherd for this church, so I'm going to ask you, are we willing to pray and fast, asking the one who's in charge? And you say, ask what? Jesus said, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We need to be getting together as a congregation and asking God for his kingdom to show up in our lives. Okay, question number 2. Do we have a genuine desire to reach the community in which your church is located? Let me ask it in a different form. Is our hearts broken for our community, for the people around us, our circles of influence? Is our heart broken for those people, for our family members, our loved ones? I know many of you it is. It is. I've talked to you. Is our heart broken for our coworkers? Is our heart broken for that stranger that you see in the grocery store you've not met yet? It's 2 things to ponder there. Do we have a deep commitment to God's authority? Number 1. And is our hearts broken for the lostness of our community? Because if God's authority, if His authority has our deepest respect and commitment, the brokenness will become a small hurdle to overcome if we look at it in the right perspective. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 2. Isaiah 66, verse 2 says, has not my hand, this is God talking now through the prophet Isaiah. He says, has not my hand made all these things, and so they came into being, declares the Lord. These are the ones I look on with favor, those who are humble and contrite in spirit, and who tremble at my word. I'll bring this up again in a moment, but number one in that verse, he says plain as day, who made this? Who made everything that you can imagine or see? Jesus, right? Y'all know Jesus was there at creation, right? So Jesus made all this stuff. He says, has not my hand made them? And so they came into being. He's asking us, who's in charge? He's in charge, right? I mean, he's the one in charge. But yet we want to whine and fuss, and I've heard people complain about how mean God is and unfair He is and all that kind of stuff. God's in charge. He's in control. He knows what's going on. But here's the next thing. Those who are humble and contrite in spirit and who tremble at my word, that's the ones He sees in favor. That's who He looks at. Those who have humbled themselves and said, okay, God, you're in charge. Yes, Dad, I'm listening. His word. Y'all hold on to that thought. I'm the creator. I never want to get around you kind of seeing that again. If we don't do it now, we'll do that. He says every knee is going to bow and confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. There's a guy named Andrew Murray from back in the late 1800s, the early 1900s. He said this, we must begin to believe that God, in the mystery of prayer, has entrusted us with a force that can move the heavenly world and can bring its power down to earth. We've got to begin to act and behave and live as if we believe just that He created everything. We've got a respectful fear and we believe with everything we have that He created all. Therefore, He has the power to make His kingdom come here on earth as it is in heaven. We've got to begin to move as a church that way. We've got to begin to believe it. So I want you to look in the book of Luke, chapter 8, starting with verse 22. The book of Luke, 8:22. Now imagine you were one of the 12 people that was hanging out with Jesus. You begun to follow Him. You begun to see Him do some really weird stuff. And one day, He asked just an ordinary thing. Hey guys, let's go get in one of y'all's boats and let's go to the other side of this lake. It's an ordinary request, right? These are fishermen. But imagine yourself there and He's saying that. And you're like, okay, let's go do it. We're fishermen. We're expert sailors across this lake. Let's go. We're going with Jesus. Ordinary thing, right? I'm going to read there. It says, one day Jesus said to His disciples, let's go over to the other side of the lake. So they got into a boat and they set out. Now these were 12, I can't do that right now, but anyway, 12 ordinary worker kind of guys. They were fishermen. One of them guys was a tax collector. They were just ordinary guys. At one time, some of them had been enemies with each other and all that kind of stuff. They're just ordinary guys. And he asked them to do one simple task. And one simple task turned into a mind-altering, heart-changing event for all 12 of those guys. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Master, Master, we're going to drown. He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters, and the storm subsided, and all was calm. Do you ever feel like, maybe some of y'all longtime church people, have you ever felt like I'm trying to follow God, I'm trying to do what he sent me to do, and you feel like God just fell asleep on you? I mean, be honest, don't lie. Yeah, you feel like, well, where's God right now, right? You can rest assured. He may not be paying attention to your problem like you see fit, but that does not mean God is not aware and that God's not in control. If God were out of control, do you think he'd have been sleeping in front of the boat? But he wasn't. He was in control of that situation enough that he said, ho hum, I'm going to go take a nap. I mean, he's in control. He's got it. To me, after I looked at it from a different direction, I thought, well, maybe I ought to just go take a nap with him, so to speak. Maybe I ought to just ho-hum down a little bit. Did Jesus know about that storm? He did, right? He had to. Who is Jesus? He's God, right? He had to know. He created the air. So he knew about it before it was going to happen. So if he knew about it before it was going to happen and he invited his compadres, his best buddies on earth, to get in this boat with him and take him to the other side, you think about it. If he knew about that, he must have had a plan, right? So I want you to know today that even if you're going through a rough patch in your life, whatever it is, do you think God don't know about it? Do you think God didn't know it was coming? And do you know that? I want you to know this. He's still in the boat. And if he seems like he's napping, maybe we ought to take a nap with him. A spiritual little take a chill. But here's something that grabs me about this so far. These guys never asked him beforehand, okay, Jesus, we know some junk you done did, so before we get in this boat, will you give us safe passage? Nobody ever asked him ahead of time. They didn't call on him until the storm got to hammering. Do we got that habit in life? When the storm starts hammering, then we start begging, oh, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. Jesus, save me. I think it's high time that we start asking Jesus on the front end about stuff. On the front end. And then even if it happens, we already know that we've talked to him about it. He's aware of it. And he's not just napping, he's aware. But it ain't bothering God. But see, they had already decided the outcome, what was going to be. They had already decided they was going to drown. they didn't ask him, well, what's your plan? Anything? We see the storm's on. What are you trying to teach us, Lord? Any of that? They just decided, here's what's going to happen. We're going to drown. That's it. We're going to drown. But let me move along. They are the ones who needed to hear. Let me re-stress that. They are the ones who needed to hear his authority over the storm. The wind and the waves, he spoke to the wind and waves, right? It wasn't the wind and waves that needed to hear his authority because they were already under his authority. But those guys, those 12 dudes in the boat, needed to hear him speak to those waves so they would know his authority. Sometimes we may need to be up in the middle of a storm so that when God handles it, we are aware of his authority over that situation. So that's what I want us to grab there. He says, where is your faith? He asked his disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, who is this? He commands even the winds and the water to obey him. Who is this guy? Jesus took an ordinary thing and changed their understanding about who he was. While still yet, he remained the same. God's never changed. Into the region of Gerasene, across the lake from Galilee. Demon-possessed man, but had lived in the tomb. Soon as he stepped, this man surprised Jesus. No, he didn't. We're getting the catch of it now, right? Do you think Jesus had a plan when he went there? God does nothing without purpose. God does nothing without purpose. Hear me now. Whenever you see a friend going through cancer treatments, God does nothing without purpose. When you have a friend that's got this problem, God does nothing without purpose. And then you may think, well, God's being mean in his purpose. No, he's not. He loves us. He's shaping us. He's changing us for the better. He allowed this man to become demon-possessed. Do y'all believe that? He allowed it. We'll see. We'll see in a minute. God does nothing without purpose. And so when he stepped on shore, here's this buck-naked man, this demon-possessed, standing in front of him. And when he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." Side note, James chapter 2, verse 19. Jot it down in your notes. James 2:19 says that the demons also believe and they tremble. So you might decide that, yeah, I believe God. I believe all about God and everything. But you see right there in that passage, it ain't enough to believe about God. You've got to believe him enough to follow him and love him. Believe upon his salvation that he gave you on the cross. Because it ain't enough to just believe about him, because the demons did that and they trembled. And when he saw Jesus, this demon-possessed man, he's ridden with demons. And he confessed who Jesus was. He confessed that he was Jesus, Son of the Most High God. For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Sin is going to take you further than you want to go, and it's going to keep you longer than you want to stay. Satan and his power, that's what sin is Satan. Satan's power and authority in your life, right? So it's going to keep you. Some people, because of sin, end up in solitary places, just like this man. alone and tormented in your very own souls. But here's a question. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And it come to me yesterday, mid-morning, that every one of my youngins I named. Me and Darlene, we named them. Y'all know why? The reason I named my youngins, I don't think the doctors would have named them right. Number two is I had the authority. Anna and Noah, they have the authority to name that unborn baby. So it got to pondering on me. He asked them what their name was. Do y'all know where the demons were before they were demons? Does anybody know? He was hanging out. They was hanging out with God, right? Who was God? Jesus, right? So they're hanging out there, and what happened to them? The Bible, Jesus says, I was there when they cast him down from heaven, right? Why would Jesus ask their names? His name. I mean, God named them. Did y'all realize that? God named them. He named them. So why did he ask their name? I still believe when Jesus asked questions like that, he was asking it for the benefit of those who were listening. Jesus was not surprised about who was possessing this man. He already knew. He was already going there, right? He already knew that this man was possessed, and he went there, and Jesus could have stood on the other side of the lake. It even says he had already told them to be gone, right? So he could have stood on the other side of the lake and just said, hey, y'all get out of that man. Leave him alone. Go into them pigs. He didn't do that. He took them along. It's time that us church people start taking somebody along with us to see God's hand at work, to see us serve our true and living God. Jesus took them there. He knew their names, but he wanted those guys to hear it. He wanted those guys to know. This ain't just one little demon-possessed dude. This dude's eaten up with a lot of demons, and look here. I have the power and authority over them. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. Go into the book of Revelation and read through there, and you'll find about this great shaft, an abyss, where there's stuff being held back at this moment, demons and stuff. That's where they were talking about. Don't send us there, Jesus. Don't send us there. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and the demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. God has authority over demonic activity. He has authority over the spiritual realm. I want you to understand that today. God has the authority. Are we behaving as a church like God has authority over that spiritual realm? Are we behaving that way in our personal lives? Are we believing it with everything we got? I don't want to sound too way out there or anything, but I'm just preaching what God's word says. He says he has authority over those demons because it says he gave them permission. Now, if God has authority over demons, and anything that I do outside of God's will it's attached to Satan, right? So if God has authority over that, then he has authority over my sin too. He has authority. I want us to begin to believe that with everything we got. This is not just some little petty Annie show up and have a social club and a fun singing time this morning. We were singing to the one who has authority to make thousands of demons enter a herd of pigs and run off a cliff. Y'all know that, right? I know we know it, but I think we need to remember it sometime. And it says when the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and then the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what happened, they ran off and reported this to the town and countryside. Whenever Jesus moves, people start talking. I want you to know that. I want you to learn that, believe that, live that. When Jesus moves, people start talking. You don't have to be a theologian for Jesus to move in your life. And when he moves, people start talking. Now, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom in his right mind. And the one thing I want you to know about that verse too far, I heard somebody say it last week. I don't know, is a restorative God. Jesus restored him. Have you ever thought in your own little conscious, unconscious thought or unconscious thought, whatever, that guy's too far down the road. There is no way God's going to ever do anything with him or her. They're so eaten up with drugs. There's no hope for them. You ever kind of thought that kind of thing? If you haven't, you're lying. I'm just saying it, just outright. Because we've all kind of unconsciously thought that kind of stuff. And again, it says they were afraid. Maybe it's time we gain a little respectful fear of God. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Like I said, when God moves, people talk. Then all the people of the region of Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. Those people, I just put a little note to myself. Them people asked the wrong thing. They said the wrong prayer, and he granted their request. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. I would ask you this question. This guy wanted to go with Jesus, but Jesus told him, no, go do this. Go tell people what God's doing. Do y'all believe this man really followed Jesus? He really did follow Jesus by being obedient. He went and did what God called him to do. Jesus told him to go tell people what God had done. And I find it interesting, the words got turned and it says he goes and tells people what Jesus had done. So I want to say it again, ask it again. Who is Jesus? He's God. Now, when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling, fell at his feet in the presence of all the people. She told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you, so go in peace." While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother to teach her anymore." Let me pause right there and say that this woman, she had had the issue of bleeding for a long time. That made her, in the Jewish culture, an unclean person. No one was supposed to touch her. She wasn't. There was all kind of rules about it, but she wasn't allowed to go to the temple and worship or anything. She was considered unclean. But I want you to know that as she came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, immediately she was healed. His power and authority is not limited or hindered in that situation. He turns around and he says, "Who touched me? Who touched me?" I know the power. I felt it go out of me. But I want you to know this. God's power is not like this bottle of water, where if I pop the cap off and pour some of it out, it's half empty. That's not the deal with God's power. He knows the power went out from him, but he's still got just as much power as he ever had, even though some of it went out. God knew what was going on. God knew this woman. He knew her situation. But I find it interesting that this poor little guy, Jairus, his daughter was dying. And these crowds just flocked up around him because they were expecting him. Sometimes the apparent, I want y'all to hear me good now. Sometimes the apparent Jesus following crowd can hinder you from having a real encounter with the Creator, Jesus Christ. Just because there's big fadsy crowds, and they might even got some cool music and all that kind of stuff, and Jesus, and they may hinder you from your personal deep growth and love relationship with the King. It may hinder you. Be careful in this day and time what crowd you get attached to. Because Jesus said there's many going to come in my name. There's many going to proclaim my name. He said, but not all of them are going to get there. So I want you to be careful. Be up in God's word so you know. Just because they are Jesus following, chasing after, hollering out Jesus crowd, don't mean they all about Jesus. Just had to give you that side note. This woman was just one plain, ordinary woman. I done talked about there was 12 ordinary men. There was one ordinary guy that got demon possessed. He had a spiritual issue going on. This woman had a physical issue. Those 12 guys, they had a growth issue. They needed growing. I want you to grab a hold of that. But this poor one little guy, Jairus, he wanted Jesus to heal his daughter before she died. Before she died. And they come along and said, yeah, don't worry about it. The crowd's done hindered everything. She's dead. Don't bother him anymore. Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just believe, and she will be healed. And when they arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. That was a tradition, whether they knew him or not. Jesus said, she is not dead, but asleep. They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. In the presence of God, death is only a temporary, tiny setback. It is not permanent. It's just like a sickness. But I want you to know this. They knew this girl was dead. Our reality and God's reality could be two different things, two totally different things. Keep that in mind when you're staring a problem in the face. My reality may not be the same as God's reality, and I'm going to trust him in this. He took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up, and Jesus told them, "Give her something to eat." Her parents was astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. Okay, let's try to wrap this up because I've gone a little long. But I want you to know this. I want you to take it home. We saw where God had authority over the sea. He had the authority over the wind and waves, the weather, right? God had authority over, pleaded his authority at all. So here and talk to the one who has the authority and talk to him about it. Right off the top of your head, do you have someone that you know, if they were to die today, that they would not get to spend eternity with Jesus? Is anybody in here, you know somebody, right? We all do. Does God have the authority to bring that person to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ? Does he have that authority? Do you got permission to go before him and ask him about it? Yes, you do. I didn't read that verse, but you do. He says we can come boldly before his throne of grace, right? So I want to challenge this church. I told somebody this week at work, I can't fix your problem, buddy, but I can talk to the one who can. I can talk to the one who's in charge. So I want to challenge y'all. Let's talk to the one who's in charge. I've tried to start, me and Ronnie, we're starting a men's prayer time on Saturday morning because I'm deeply convicted that we need to begin to lead as men and begin to get together and get before the throne of God and ask him, because we have people, right? We all have people, and they got problems. Why can't we ask the one who's in charge? I know we're busy. Remember that passage that we're worried about our paneled houses when we need to go to the hills and get some cedars and work on his house? Okay, but I want us as a church to begin to go before God. So next week I'm going to start asking you, what are some things we can go before God about? Are you broken over your community? I'm going to leave it at that.